Thank you for joining today's presentation on harassment awareness and prevention. Conflicts within the workplace are disagreements and disharmony that occurs within the group when differences are expressed regarding ideas, methods, and/or even other members of the team. Conflict sources can include things like differences of opinion, disagreements in methods used. It may be personalities, including communication styles or emotions that affect how we communicate, misunderstandings or perceived attacks by someone else. It can be personal biases or prejudice, and even perceptions, how we perceive things. Some of the destructive examples of behaviors that can cause a hostile work environment, these are behaviors that create hostility and lead to a negative work environment, include things like complaining, personal insults or teasing. It could be conflict avoidance. So rather than dealing with a situation, we might walk away mad. Loud arguments, fights, threats, or even attacks. So some of the impacts of this disrespectful behavior can include things like resentment from one person toward another, negative conflicts or fighting. It could be increased stress within the workplace. It could definitely harm the working the relationship between you and another employee or you and a supervisor. Damages teamwork. If we can't work together as a team, obviously the team itself is damaged. It impairs a personal growth and company success. May lead, of course, to corrective action if it's persistent or perverse, extreme, and of course risk to the business if it is allowed to continue to take place. Some of the biggest forms, or the biggest form of disrespect, is harassment in and of itself. And that's what we're going to focus on today. I mean, today's workforce represents an incredibly diverse population. We are all unique individuals. So when we work with people who are different from us, it's often easy to allow our attitudes, our biases, our prejudice to get in the way. I mean, how we're raised and brought up can sometimes influence how we react to individuals, how we communicate, and those things can actually cause some issues. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC, as most people hear of it, they're responsible for the enforcement of the federal laws like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the ADEA, which is your Age Discrimination in Employment Act, and the Americans with Disability, or ADA Act, which make it illegal to discriminate against job applicants or employees because of the person's race, color, religion, sex, gender identity, pregnancy, national origin, age for individuals 40 and older, or even things like genetic information. It's also illegal under this law to discriminate against an individual because the person complained about discrimination or filed a charge of discrimination or even participated in an employment discrimination investigation or lawsuit. Petty slights and annoyances wouldn't fall into this category, but some of the differences that we see, and we'll talk a little bit more about petty slights, but the differences that we might see in a person, it could be their skin color, culture, national origin, their marital status, or family choices, educational levels or types, so community college versus an Ivy League university, values, priorities, or lifestyle decisions, age or gender, religious beliefs. I won't go through all of these. Clothing choices, how we choose to dress. It can even be tattoos, body piercings, etc. These are all things that we might see as an individual in another person, and we may allow that to influence how we communicate with these individuals. And harassment can be, of course, about almost any personal characteristic and between any two people, coworkers, managers, even non-employees. So what is harassment? It's unwanted, persistent behaviors. And these behaviors, I mean, just like petties and annoyances, so an isolated incident, unless extremely severe, wouldn't rise to the level of being illegal harassment under the laws. I mean, to be unlawful, the conduct must create a work environment that would be intimidating, hostile, or offensive to a reasonable person. So we talk about tormenting. The conduct could be annoying or troubling, offensive, threatening, humiliating, insulting, or belittling type of behaviors. It isn't limited to sexual harassment and doesn't preclude same-gender harassment. I mean, it can include, like we talked about, gender and racial harassment, religious harassment. This could involve unwanted attention and hostility that includes jokes or taunting or teasing of someone. It's a display of offensive pictures can also fall into this category. So when we talk about some of the forms of harassment, we get into, let's talk about the verbal conduct as the first form. It can be suggestive comments, flirtations, derogatory jokes. Sometimes we don't even think about who's in our proximity or who's around us, and we tell a joke that might be offensive to someone else. It could be name-calling, kidding or teasing. Of course, obscene language, discussions of a sexual nature, reference to age, religion, national origin. These are all, of course, verbal conduct type of situations. There's also the visual conduct. This can include things like leering or gestures, somebody shaking their fist at you, derogatory or sexually oriented posters, pictures, or written words or videos. Many times we have friends who share with us on their iPhone or via a link through email a YouTube video that can be offensive. It can be cartoons or drawings, even graffiti. Notes or emails or letters written to someone are all visual forms or could be visual forms of harassment. Then there's the physical conduct. So this would be an assault, someone physically punching or hitting someone. It can be offensive, touching, grabbing, patting, pinching, stroking, or even blocking of movement. If somebody steps in front of you and blocks you from being able to continue your movement where you're headed, could be a form of harassment. So what about rubbing of shoulders or hugging? I mean, would this be a form of harassment? It could be. It depends on the parties involved. So if the person who is being hugged or having their shoulders rubbed doesn't want that, or other people are seeing someone hugging you or rubbing your shoulders and they're finding that offensive, inappropriate in the workplace, it can be considered harassment. So we have to consider our environment, those around us, and our personal space. We all have that personal space that we choose to maintain. And if someone's invading that space and we're feeling uncomfortable because of it, it can be considered harassment. So keep that in mind. The last thing, of course, is threats or demands. Obviously, these can be physical or verbal threats. Like I say, the shaking of a fist or physically punching someone. So physical versus that verbal threat, threatening to, you hear somebody say, if you do that again, I'll kill you. That could be a verbal threat. Then there's the requiring of a sexual nature. So those sexual favors or quid pro quo, which is a this for that legal reference. So it's someone, of course, seeking favors for something in return, and the favors are of a sexual nature. This conduct, it's so sufficiently perverse and severe to create a hostile work environment. So this is what harassment can look like. A hostile work environment. So when we talk about that, what does that mean? Well, it's comments or conduct based on the categories we talked about a little earlier. So age, color, disability, national origin, gender identity, or other legally protected characteristics, which unreasonably interferes with the employee's work performance. So the environment is so severe that they literally can't function there at work. They're absent because they're ill, because they can't. The thought of coming to work is just overwhelming, or it creates an intimidating or hostile or offensive work environment. So that's considered a hostile work environment. So who can commit harassment? I mean, harassment in the workplace can make for an uncomfortable and hostile work environment. Anyone in the workplace is capable of committing this type of harassment. I mean, it could be managers, employees, clients, contractors, vendors, even guests or visitors in the workplace. and everyone deserves to work in a healthy work environment. So ask yourself this question: is it harassment if the alleged harasser has good intentions? So the example here, Joe greets all women by giving them a hug. He likes to be friendly, and he's outgoing. It's just the way he is. So I go back to the previous example of, is hugging or rubbing of shoulders harassment? It can be. Like I indicated, if Joe's hugging someone and they don't want to be hugged, for them that can be harassment, and they have to set those boundaries. Or if he's constantly hugging or stroking or rubbing of shoulders in someone else, and somebody else in the office finds that inappropriate in the work environment, they're severely bothered by that display in the workplace, it can be. So keep that in mind. Even if it's good intentions, it's just the way the person is, they're just friendly that way, it can still be considered harassment. We want everyone to take a no harassment zone kind of attitude. And note that bullying, it is a form of harassment. It's a subtler form. It typically can be more subtle, so it may be a little harder to recognize, but bullying is a form of harassment. So let's talk about what to do if you see or experience harassment in the workplace. If you're comfortable, confront the individual, discuss it with them, and resolve it one-on-one. So if someone's hugging you or rubbing your shoulders, you simply say, I'm just not comfortable with you doing that, and I'd ask that you not, and respect that. And hopefully that's going to resolve it, and it's one and done. You've dealt with it. If the conduct persists or you're not comfortable confronting that individual, report it to your immediate supervisor. Don't let it go. Make sure that you bring it to their attention. You want to have it dealt with. And if your immediate supervisor or manager is the problem, they're the ones that are doing the harassing or causing that harassing environment, then of course go to someone in human resources or executive management. Take it to someone else higher up. And then document the facts before they fade from your mind. You don't want to be able to not be able to recall the details when you go to someone, because that's what we need to be able to investigate. So make sure that you document the facts immediately so that you don't forget them before you have a chance to talk with someone or literally write out a complaint. It's essential that members of the workplace remain aware of the established policies governing the workplace behavior and that they report any violations. Those who report allegations of harassment, they're protected. They're legally protected from retaliation for that action. So make sure you report it and feel comfortable doing so. So again, we talk about here, there will be no retaliation against an employee who reports a complaint or who provides a witness statement during an investigation. Retaliation in any form by anyone will not be tolerated in the workplace. So part of maintaining a good work environment and avoiding situations that would be considered harassing is, of course, to be respectful. And so what does being respectful consist of? It's expressing disagreements in a way that values one's opinions and is respectful in the delivery and the content. So the words we use, the gestures, how we go about bringing that particular issue to the forefront with the other individual. So members work together for resolution. They can agree and still show respect and work together. We listen to ideas from someone else. They're heard and given consideration. We don't just shut someone down because we can't, for one reason or another, we just don't care for that individual. We don't want to allow that personal issue to prevent us from being able to work together. We want to make sure that there are no personal attacks. There's never any reason to attack someone from a personal perspective in the work environment. And then, of course, always allow for differences without judgment. Everybody is different. We all come from different backgrounds, environments, and we shouldn't let those influence how we work together. And then again, make sure that the delivery, how we communicate with each other, is in a calm and open manner. So use respectful communication, interactions with individuals in the words, the content, the physical gestures. Maintain that open environment. And like I say, be respectful. So let's recap what we've talked about today, and that is stick with the established policies that are in place. Make sure that you're trained on them, that you understand them. Enforce them. Take a zero tolerance policy toward workplace harassment, hostile work environment, or retaliation in any form. If you are experiencing it or witnessing it, observing it, bring it to someone's attention. Report it. Make sure that it's dealt with. Don't allow those types of interactions to take place within the workplace. We all deserve and want a healthy work environment. I thank you for your time.